Welcome to Squawk Alley for a Monday morning. Joining us today, John Steinberg, the CEO of the Daily Mail North America. With us, as always, John Ford, Kayla Tausche, looking snazzy this morning on a day where markets are having some trouble staying out of the red, but definitely climbing off of the session lows. Dow is down 200 points, now down about 133. Of course, all the major averages in the red as we get these headlines over the weekend that the negotiations regarding Greece have failed once again. Bob Pisani is on the floor with a look at some of the biggest movers. Bob?
Well, 3-to-1 decline into advancing stocks, and we've not made any headway towards getting rid of that. It's basically been down the whole morning. A lot of people want to know, is this Greece or is this concern about the Federal Reserve? The general feeling on the trading desk is this is mostly due to uncertainty about Greece, although it's still pretty modest. So take a look at the Dow. I'll show this simply. Dow movers. It's a fairly diverse group of stocks that are all down. So Microsoft is weak, 3M's weak, IBM's weak, Merck's weak. So you got healthcare and tech. Telecom weak, Microsoft also on the downside. So it's a fairly broad decline in stocks generally here. If you take a look at some of the other sectors that are moving here, there's concern about Greece, but interestingly, for example, gold doesn't have much of a bid, and the dollar is not doing much. So I don't think it's too widespread. I think it's pretty modest. And look, gold's not really doing much at all here. In terms of market concern and volatility, the VIX spiked up a little bit at 15, but that's not in the level of range that would still indicate a lot of concern. As I mentioned before many times, 20 is when I pay attention to the VIX. Right now, it spiked up a bit to 15, still pretty modest. International banks are one of the only areas where you're seeing some concerns, pretty modest in the United States. So Citigroup and JP Morgan are on the weak side, but more concern in UBS and Credit Suisse and the other European banks. But remember, they don't have the big exposure to Greece that they used to have. So even there, the declines are only about 2%. Overall, we're starting to look rather technically poor in the market. That's the only comment that I would make right now. The S&P is about 2% off its highs. But, Carl, we are now below the 100-day moving average on the S&P 500. And when traders are unsure of what's going on, they turn to technicals. The next stop will be the 200-day moving average. And if we get even close to that, you'll see a lot more concerns in the market. Carl, back to you.
All right, Bob, thank you very much. From the technicals to tech, let's talk some Twitter. Saudi Prince Al-Walid claiming he was misquoted by the FT today, talking about Twitter's incoming interim CEO, Jack Dorsey. According to the paper, Prince Al-Walid said he did not support Dorsey becoming Twitter's permanent CEO since he's already running that company, mobile payment startup Square. But the prince walked that back a bit today, telling CNBC in a statement, should Mr. Dorsey wish to take on the CEO role, I would support him. What the FT reported was wrong. Jack Dorsey talked about his future at Twitter during that exclusive interview on Squawk on the Street Friday. Here's what he said.
Not even a question I'm considering right now. We have a great search committee looking for the right fit for Twitter long term. And my focus right now is to make sure our product cadence and momentum of execution continues within the company, and also to make sure Square continues its cadence and its momentum with our strong team over there.
Meantime, shares of Twitter having a very rough day. A new 52-week low. We're below $35. Kramer this morning, John Ford, said the interview was an embarrassment for both Costello and Dorsey. What is the long term for Twitter right now?
I think, first of all, it's hard for an investor to parse exactly what's true and what's not when we're talking about Twitter. It seems like every statement that comes out, you have to go, really? He says, Dorsey says, I'm not really thinking about being CEO. Really? Because, you've been thinking about leading things for a long time. You were very passionate about power at Twitter at one time. Now the Saudi prince. What is he really saying there? What is he really? Because the quote in the FT, I mean, it would have been nice if he had explained exactly what he was trying to say, if he wasn't trying to say he wasn't supporting Dorsey. I think at this point, what they tried to say was that this is about execution. It's about coming out with new updates to the Twitter product faster and faster, about trying things, and we have to see how that bears out. But at this moment, it's a big moment of upheaval for Twitter. Dick Costello actually popular among the rank and file, though more controversial among the executives at Twitter who had turned over quite a bit. So Jack Dorsey's going to have some things to prove coming in the door there.
I mean, Jack Dorsey's the next CEO of Twitter, assuming that he does a job. And Henry Blodgett had a very good piece over the weekend kind of parsing it and saying that he's interim to see if he screws up or not, or if he's able to stay with it. I don't think there's any other CEO candidate. He's the product visionary. secondary. They have Bain, which has done a very good job on revenue. They have Anthony Noto, who's doing a very good job of putting things together.
Who was the target of a piece in the Wall Street Journal today, talking about how he's the central influence of the company. He has a lot of focus at a time when the company doesn't have one, and that they seem to be piling on his responsibilities because they don't want him to lose focus. They want him to stay busy because they want to keep him for the long haul.
Absolutely. So you've got the ops guy with Noto, you've got the revenue guy in Bain. Dorsey is the product guy. Whether or not he can actually make product changes, because he hasn't really done any the past few times around, remains to be seen. But I don't know if there's any possible way to parse his interview other than him saying he wants that job. You get asked, you want to be CEO, you say no or you say yes. Saying I'm not thinking about it, like that just means you want it.
Is this going to be bought? Is that, you think?
Well, that's the other thing I thought, Carl. Is it if the interim doesn't play out, it gets bought. It's so cheap right now. When you think of WhatsApp for $19 billion and Twitter at $24 billion, the question is who can get it regulatorily done? Facebook, no way. Apple, definitely. Google, maybe. But yes, I mean, the bid should be rolling in any minute now.
We're hearing from a lot of people who want to be short, but they're chicken because of that very possibility.
And also being short is fairly expensive because it's a popular thesis, or it has been for the last few months. I think, John, though, the question over whether the company will get bought is especially topical because this is a company where Dick Costolo notified the board 6-7 months ago that he did not want to remain as CEO, and yet you are seeing an interim CEO this many months later and not a successor to him already chosen. Because they don't have that done, it makes you think, did they try to sell the company already and fail?
Well,
or are
Kayla,
they not appointing someone permanent because this is one of the plans?
Let's parse. I think he said he told 1 or 2 people who were board members 6 or 7 months ago, but didn't formally tell the board. It's not clear exactly how this story lines up.
This is like 7th grade English class where we all read a text and now we're determining like the postmodern meaning of the text. But Kayla, to that...
Wuthering Heights?
But to the point, the reason why the whole story doesn't make sense is because he said to them, I want to leave, and they said, well, let's put Jack in. And then some people probably said, well, can Jack really do it or not? And they said, well, let's put him in interim like they did with Steve Jobs and see if it works out or not.
The question we
That's
should
the
be
only story
asking
makes
is,
sense.
who's the CEO of Square in this case? If Jack does remain CEO of Twitter, Square is not an inconsequential company. $6 billion.
Well, you know, Steve Jobs ran Apple and Pixar at the same time, very successful, and we all know Jack Dorsey loves him some Steve Jobs. So here's his chance to see if he's been in the wilderness long enough, not only to grow the beard, but to develop that higher sense of management expertise.
A lot more still to come. Next up this morning,